let's talk about the new party rumours first. But we can't not set the backdrop for this, because it's a subject in which we're both vitally interested and which is the obvious context for this discussion. Brexit has to be stopped. That's the settled will of the most powerful and the richest people in Britain. The peasants' revolt of the Brexit referendum has to be quelled. And if it can't be quelled with the existing party system, and it looks like it can't, then they have to look for something else, don't they?
Well, I think that's what they're going for, isn't it? I mean, it's ironic, though, that one of the key figures supposedly in setting up this new party is a chap called Vince Cable, who missed a vote along with Tim Farron, didn't he, on stopping the customs bill going through? So
yeah, at least Tim.
A tragic metaphor of how this party's going to do.
It is. It's not the best of starts. At least Tim was talking about how gay sex is a sin. Vince was, however, talking about setting up an anti-Brexit party and lost the chance to stop Brexit.
Yes, it's ironic, isn't it? Look, a few points on this party, because it's going to be an anti-Brexit party as it happens. It's also going to be billed as being a centrist party, isn't it? Now, for me, does this not just show how out of touch these people really are? Why is Jeremy Corbyn doing well? Why is the Tory right on the march? You know, why right across the EU are anti-establishment parties doing well at pretty much every election? In some cases, new parties. Look at France, you know. Well, it's because people have had enough of the status quo, haven't they? People have had enough of essentially this boring middle ground centre. So the idea that they would want to set up a centrist party to stop Brexit, maybe to me shows how rampantly out of touch they are. And politics changes, it fluctuates like the tides, and you know, look back to when Thatcher's in power, it was polarised, and then it got a bit centrist, didn't it? And now it's more polarised again. And these people, in my opinion, if they want to set up a centre party, they're hiding to nothing. They're showing how out of touch they really are. In terms of how likely I think it is, actually, I must say I think because they've denied it, which means it's almost definitely happening, in my opinion. I think it is happening. Why? Is it a coincidence that Vince Cable is now calling for a change in the Lib Dem rules where a new Lib Dem leader does not have to be a sitting MP? I don't think it is a coincidence. I've got a little theory on this. I think I think Gina Miller or somebody like that would come in as a leader. They would then coordinate and cooperate with other big Remain groups like your mate, Tony Blair, or Nick Clegg and this lot. And a few, maybe poach a few of the Tories, like you Ken Clarks, and then all of a sudden it makes sense then, doesn't it, to roll all these groups into a new party. And I think maybe that's where we're heading.
Yeah, I think so too. Now let's look deeper at the context. There's no majority for Chequers. In fact, they might as well even stop talking about Chequers, which I'll remind you was being hailed, including on this show, by some of the biggest journalistic names in the land, Dan the Corbyn man, for example, as a great triumph for Theresa May. Now it's the love that daren't speak its name, as Barnier threw it out lock, stock and barrel, and the majority of Conservatives showed that they are against it. So there's no majority for the Chequers type of Brexit. There's no majority for the type of Brexit favoured by thee and me. So it could very well be that because there has to be a positive vote in Parliament, i.e. something has to get a positive majority in Parliament, that nothing achieves a positive vote in Parliament. And therefore, when we reach March, we crash out of the EU without any kind of arrangements with the EU at all. And that would be bound to provoke either a new general election, hopefully, if the Queen read the runes properly, that's what she'd call for, or another referendum. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think it's very obvious that that's what we're working towards. Why? Because if you look at a lot of these groups, your People's Votes, your Best for Britain, who are they really mainly being propped up by? Well, it's the George Soroses of this world. And isn't it in George Soros's interest to have a no deal? Because he would feel, as the EU would feel, that if we have a no deal, they would then have to have a second referendum. and therefore they believe they've done the maths and out of a choice between a no deal or a remain, that they think remain would win, and therefore Britain stays in the EU, and we all forget that the whole, democratic vote ever happened. I think that that's the realistic thing that they're working towards, and they can say what they like, but I think that's the truth.
I agree with you.
They're wrong. I think they're wrong, actually, because remaining now, we know, would mean signing up for a United States of Europe, for an EU army. It would mean signing up for to not have control of our laws, borders and money and all this kind of stuff. And fundamentally, the people do not like the idea that their democratic vote could be overturned. So I actually do think that although a no deal is not necessarily the preferable outcome in all this, I do think if it was put to the people, a no deal would beat Remain at a second referendum. But that's just my opinion.
Well, I like referenda. I'm quite good at them. I always win them. And I'm certainly ready to fight another referendum. But I would say this to the political class, and tell me if you agree or not, that it is extremely dangerous. It is playing fast and loose with millions and millions of British people to send them the message that they think they live in a democracy, but money, foreign money, George Soros, millions, these big banks, Goldman Sachs, and all the others who piled millions of foreign dollars into our internal affairs will prevail in the end. That's a very, very risky strategy for the political class, don't you think?
Absolutely. Now, look, I actually went door knocking today, believe it or not, in Leicester, which is by definition Middle England. The people that are there, and I went door knocking for the sake of argument. Knocked on doors of people at random that voted Labour, Tory, Remain, Leave, because I wanted to get the views of your typical Middle England normal man and woman on the street. And the reality is that in that particular seat, general election, the turnout was about 65%. Of the EU referendum, the turnout was about 85%. So you've got about 20% of people there that voted specifically for a referendum that don't normally vote. Well, do you think they are ever going to engage politically again if their vote does not count, if their vote is overturned? Do you think actually more than 20% of people are never going to vote again if they don't get their will enforced? Why? Because what's the point? And I would have a trouble arguing with him. I would have trouble saying to anybody, please go out and vote, your vote matters. Well, it doesn't, does it? If you do vote and it turns out that it can get overturned. And I agree with you. I think it would be an absolute hammer blow for democracy in Britain. I find it very ironic, by the way, there's a party with Democrats in their name, the Liberal Democrats, that are so willing to overturn democracy in this way.
What you don't know, because you're a young man, is that once upon a time, journalists used to do what you were doing today all the time. They used to go to towns and talk to real people. Now they sit nursing a nice cappuccino served by a Portuguese waitress, made by a Slovenian barista, and gripe about Brexit. Patrick Cristys, reporter from Westmonster. Thanks for joining us on the mother of all talk shows.